Last year, there was a hip hop album that dethroned Taylor Swift from number one spot by going number one in its first week. It sold well over 200,000 copies, it went platinum, and has since gone on to sell millions of records worldwide. Now, that album was Revival by Eminem, and that album was an absolute disaster for his career at the time. An album which to many was an attack against their political beliefs, and had many fans asking, for the old M, they wanted old Eminem back. Such a poor reception actually led to him releasing a whole other album responding to everyone 1 year later called Kamikaze, which, by the way, if you haven't heard that yet, I strongly recommend you check it out now. It's full of bangers, some great songs in there, and yeah, I recommend you listen to it. But going back to Revival for a second, that album was full of anger, politics and self-reflection, instead of all that classic stuff we come to expect from Eminem, and it was inherently and foundationally mediocre, and it left many fans asking what happened to Eminem. Why was the ninth album so poorly received, and why did Eminem shift so dramatically that he thought this was a good idea? Eminem was certainly not dead at the time, but he wasn't exactly trending upwards either. He's in a weird crossroads now where his next move could determine his whole legacy for a lot of fans around the world. Today, we'll take a deeper look at what happened to Eminem, what he can do from now to maintain his status as a GOAT candidate, and also a deeper look at hip hop in general to understand why and how so many artists seem to fall off as time passes by. Eminem's been missing for what seems like a whole generation. It must be about half a decade now where he hasn't really said anything too meaningful. Mind you, this isn't the first time he's gone for half a decade, albeit the last time was due to drug-related incidences. But nonetheless, what's happened to Eminem and to hip-hop? Why did M go wrong? And why are the hip-hop old heads so poorly received in this new generation? If I told you to pick a favourite rapper 10 years ago, who would it be? Kanye West? Nas? Jay-Z? How about Snoop Dogg, 50 Cent or Lil Wayne? Maybe Notorious B.I.G., Tupac or Eminem? Of those artists who have released their album in the last 10 years, who would still make your list today? While Life is Good was unanimously received as a really good album by Nas, Nasir, his latest project, failed to impress even the superfans. Recovery was a great project all the way round, and Kamikaze is a good album all things considered, but in a world where Eminem is dissing MGK and DJ Academics, it's hard really to defend him. Kanye West musically has relatively been consistent over the last few years, in my opinion, but compare Ye to Graduation and compare Yeezus to College Dropout, and you start to see some holes in his work. Eminem released Kamikaze out of nowhere on August 31st, where Dre was an executive producer, and he also had a handful of others helping out. And to me, this sounds a lot like 8 Mile Eminem. Songs about D12 and crappy relationships, talking about his struggles as well as his personal battles with others. Social media seemed to gravitate towards all the name dropping and the disses on the album, but there were some real gems on this project if you listen closely. Tracks like Stepping Stone and Nice Guy really speak to me as a fan, and you can really hear the calls for help from an aging superstar in our noisy generation. There are several references to the challenges he faces about how the new kids can't understand his top tier lyricism. He also acknowledges the L he took on Revival, which received the worst ever reviews of his career, and he acknowledges that he also should have reworded some parts of the BET cypher. This project embodies the best of Eminem. It's filled with conflict, disses and relationship advice, coated with incredible beats and dope rapping. While I'm still a big Eminem fan, I admit that Revival is my least favourite of all his albums, and the BET cypher as well, it didn't quite hit the mark. Although I'm very happy to see a leading white figure taking a stand for black people and taking a stand against our oppressors. I honestly think white people should do a lot more when it comes to black issues. On the other hand, when you have Kanye West, screaming slavery was a choice and wearing MAGA hats, fans reacted in a similar suit, claiming that the genius musician was crazy. Ye suddenly isolated his core fan base by showing support for an agenda that most of us feel oppressed by. Here's another Asian megastar showing a level of disconnection with his fans, which ultimately felt like some elaborate move to sell more shoes. But either way, as another season of Yeezus passes us by, Kanye's music was receiving mixed reviews at best. Nasir, the Nas project I mentioned before, that gave Nas the worst reviews of his career and was critically panned. My once favourite rappers dropping an album that I still, to this day, haven't really listened to from beginning to end. I've gone from track to track, but not thoroughly, Ye, Kanye's album this year, critically panned, giving Kanye the worst reviews of his career. While 444 was debatably the best project of the year last year, Magna Carta and The Blueprint 3 received some of the worst reviews of Jay-Z's career. Can you see the trend here? Very few artists can maintain a high level of creative brilliance as the years go by, after a long time in the industry, and it's not a great look for hip hop in my opinion. Where many artists meander off into different genres and even industries sometimes, it's clear to see the issues where older heads are just losing the flow. Some examples of from the above, like what I mentioned before, is like Snoop Dogg dropping his gospel album, or 50 Cent, Ice Cube and Common, so on, all going into Hollywood with things like Power, Friday, and just some, good shows out there. In my opinion, it's a staple of the change in the environment. My intuition would say that it's hard to keep talking about being broke or your come up after 6 multi-platinum selling albums where you always talk about being broke or your come up. It takes one look at my favourite rapper to tell me how true this is. Look at Logic. Logic has consistently put out at least one project a year since 2010, and while he's only getting better and better as time goes by, people are slowly starting to realise how often he talks about being biracial or about his come up. Like, we get it, bro. While I don't think he talks about race too much at all in my opinion, it's a very popular argument that people give when trying to critique him, and it's something we can't ignore. Eminem similarly has already rapped at length about his struggles in the past with Kim, his daughter Hailey, and his parents. So what else is there for us to know about his story? It's simple, really. There's nothing. Considering the vast majority of us can't relate to the lives of these aging megastars, there's very little they can talk about to spark our interest other than the few things that apply to all of us, politics, relationships, things like that. This is a big issue with conscious rap, as someone like Kanye couldn't get away with rapping about money, drugs and women for a whole album. Or could he? It takes one look over at King Overdose to tell us that things could be different. J. Cole is, undoubtedly, one of the most successful MCs of our generation, with every album he's ever dropped going platinum, at least, and KOD being the 10th top selling album of the year in 2018, sold out tours all over the world, and I could go on forever. While critics seem to love roasting him, his commercial success really does speak for itself. Kendrick Lamar, on the other hand, he taps in where J. Cole taps out, and carries the critical accolades on his back literally like it's nothing. Most notably by being the first hip-hop artist ever to win the Pulitzer, whatever prize for music. Damn. See what I did there? These two, the so-called saviors of rap, aren't new to the game either. The masses were first introduced to both J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar in 2011 with their debut albums Cold World and Section 80, although both of them were active in the scene a few years prior to this. While this obviously doesn't compare to the 20-year, 11-album career of Eminem, it spells a very different game compared to the kids today. Alas, can Eminem, Kanye West and Nas turn the game around one last time? Or is it really over for the old heads? Can the saviors of rap change the game, show us that it's possible to maintain GOAT status over a decade in the game? Or will they start to fall off too? I don't have the answers to these questions. Now that concludes my first ever attempt at a video essay. Hip hop was always something I've been passionate about. I just haven't known how to formulaically speak about it. But this whole, you can tell that I'm inspired by this whole Eminem saga. I actually have a lot to say about Eminem and his legacy in hip hop. He's one of my favorite artists. But yeah, it's always been something that I'm passionate about, and hopefully I can drop more videos about it. I didn't really want to step on the toes of some of the other hip hop channels out there that talk about it more religiously than I do, but I don't know, my fire is burning right now. I really want to talk about this, and I really had to get it off my chest. But anyway, as always, this video is basically done, so now is the start of a conversation. What do you guys think about Eminem and hip hop as a whole? What do you think of Revival, Kamikaze, Nazir, Ye, and all the other new lyrical projects that are out at the moment? KOD, damn. What do you want to see next from the old heads, and what do you want to see next from the new heads, Joey Badass, Kendrick Lamar? I'm a big hip hop fan, as I said before, and Eminem has always been one of my favourite artists, alongside Nas, J. Cole, and currently Logic, which isn't really a surprise considering that J. Cole looks up to Nas a lot, and Logic really idolizes J. Cole, but we'll go on about that in another video. As always, if you enjoyed, hit subscribe, smash that like button, and honestly, let's have a real chat about this in the comments. If you're not already part of the team, hit the bell so you don't miss anything. And if you want to keep in touch and see what I'm doing on a day-to-day, follow me on Twitter, get at me on Instagram, and let's keep this conversation going. So yeah, all the links, as I mentioned, will be in the description below. Support me on Patreon too if you want to help me out further, and yeah, that's basically it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.